When Moses led the Israelites across the Red Sea, the journey to the Promised Land had only just begun. For 40 years they wandered the wilderness, guided by divine promises and tested by hardships. But as Moses' time drew to an end, the weight of leadership passed to a new figure, Joshua, the man chosen to lead Israel into the land flowing with milk and honey. Joshua's story is one of courage, faith, and unshakable resolve. As the sun set on the generation that left Egypt, Joshua stood at the threshold of destiny. His mission was clear: to conquer the land promised to Abraham's descendants and establish a nation rooted in the covenant with God. But the journey ahead was far from easy. Giants roamed the land, fortified cities towered before them, and the hearts of the people wavered between faith and fear. Through battles, alliances, and miraculous victories, Joshua's leadership became a testament to unwavering trust in divine guidance. From the walls of Jericho to the sun standing still at Gibeon, this is the story of Joshua and the Promised Land. Let's explore that today. And if you're ready for more wisdom, give this video a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell. When Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt across the parted Red Sea and through the wilderness, he carried the weight of a divine mission. For 40 years, Moses stood as the intermediary between God and his chosen people. But as the Israelites approached the edge of the Promised Land, God revealed to Moses that he would not enter it. After 40 years of leading the Israelites through trials, miracles, and revelations, Moses' journey was coming to an end. But before his departure, God had already chosen his successor, a man of unwavering faith and courage, Joshua, son of Nun. This is the story of how leadership passed from the greatest prophet of Israel to the commander who would lead them into their destiny. God himself chose Joshua, the son of Nun, to be the next leader of Israel. Joshua had long served as Moses' assistant, standing by him in the tent of meeting and witnessing firsthand the miracles and trials that shaped the nation. He was among the 12 spies sent to scout the land of Canaan, and he, along with Caleb, stood alone in faith, believing that the land could be taken despite the giants and fortified cities. His unwavering trust in God's promises set him apart. As Moses neared the end of his life, God instructed him to bring Joshua before Eleazar, the priest, and the entire assembly. In this solemn and sacred moment, Moses laid his hands upon Joshua, anointing him before the eyes of all Israel. This public display was not merely symbolic, it signified divine authorization. God commanded that a portion of Moses' spirit would rest upon Joshua, empowering him for the immense task ahead. This act of laying hands was an ancient practice representing the transference of authority and blessing. Moses addressing the nation. In his final address, Moses summoned Joshua before the people and spoke words of encouragement. "Be strong and courageous, for you shall bring the people of Israel into the land that I swore to give them, and I will be with you." These words, though spoken by Moses, echoed the very command of God. Joshua's preparation was not instantaneous. For years, he had been shaped under Moses' leadership. He had witnessed the giving of the 10 Commandments, the building of the tabernacle, and the rebellion of the Israelites. Each experience had refined him, instilling lessons of patience, reliance on God, and steadfastness. The passing of the staff of leadership occurred on Mount Nebo, where Moses was granted a view of the Promised Land. There, Moses reiterated God's commands and reminded Joshua of the necessity to cling to the law. He entrusted Joshua with the sacred responsibility of ensuring that Israel would obey the covenant. The visual of Moses gazing upon the land he would not enter serves as a poignant reminder that leadership often involves sacrifices unseen by others. Moses died on that mountain, and the people mourned for 30 days. After the mourning period, all eyes turned to Joshua. His first steps as the new leader were pivotal. God himself spoke directly to Joshua, reaffirming the promise that had been given to Moses. "Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised to Moses." God charged Joshua with the task of leading the people across the Jordan River and into the land of Canaan. The transition into leadership was immediate, but not without divine reassurance. "Be strong and courageous," God told Joshua multiple times. This repetition underscored the magnitude of the task ahead and the need for unwavering faith. God instructed Joshua to meditate on the book of the law day and night, emphasizing that success would come through obedience and alignment with divine will. Joshua's leadership began with organizing the people for the crossing of the Jordan. He sent 2 spies to scout Jericho, signaling that although the leadership had changed, the mission remained the same. This act also reflected Joshua's strategic mindset, a quality necessary for the conquest that lay ahead. Before the people crossed the Jordan, Joshua commanded them to consecrate themselves, for God was about to perform wonders among them. The Ark of the Covenant, symbolizing God's presence, would lead the way. When the priests carrying the ark stepped into the river, the waters stopped flowing, allowing the nation to cross on dry ground. This miraculous event mirrored the crossing of the Red Sea under Moses, affirming Joshua's leadership in the eyes of the people. The early days of Joshua's leadership revealed not only his capability, but also the fulfillment of God's promises. His obedience and courage were met with divine intervention, setting the stage for the conquests to come. Through every step, Joshua's reliance on God became the foundation of his leadership, establishing him as the man who would conquer the Promised Land and bring the Israelites into the inheritance long awaited. When Joshua assumed leadership after Moses' passing, he stood on the banks of the Jordan River, gazing at the land promised to Israel. His mission was clear but daunting: to lead the Israelites in conquering Canaan and establishing a nation grounded in God's covenant. The task ahead was not one of mere political or military strategy. It was a spiritual conquest that required unwavering faith, obedience, and courage. God's first directive to Joshua was to prepare the people to cross the Jordan River. This crossing would mark the beginning of their campaign to claim the land. Joshua instructed the officers to pass through the camp, commanding the people to gather provisions. In 3 days, they would cross the river and step into the land God had sworn to their ancestors. Joshua also sent 2 spies to scout Jericho, the first major city in their path. The spies entered the home of Rahab, a woman who recognized the God of Israel's power and chose to protect them. In return for her faithfulness, she secured a promise that she and her family would be spared during the city's destruction. This encounter underscored a key theme of Joshua's leadership: the inclusion of those outside Israel who demonstrated faith in God. As the people prepared to cross the Jordan, Joshua ordered the priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant ahead of them. The Ark, a symbol of God's presence, would lead the way. When the priests' feet touched the waters, the river miraculously stopped flowing, allowing the entire nation to cross on dry ground. This event, reminiscent of the Red Sea crossing, reinforced God's power and Joshua's divine appointment as leader. Upon crossing, Joshua instructed 12 men to take stones from the riverbed to build a memorial at Gilgal. This monument would serve as a lasting reminder of God's faithfulness and the miraculous crossing. That night, the Israelites camped at Gilgal, where they celebrated the Passover and renewed their covenant with God. The next major challenge was the conquest of Jericho. God outlined an unconventional strategy, instructing Joshua to have the people march around the city once a day for 6 days, with priests carrying the ark and blowing trumpets. On the 7th day, they circled the city 7 times. As the trumpets sounded and the people shouted, the walls of Jericho collapsed, allowing the Israelites to take the city. This victory, achieved through faith and obedience rather than traditional warfare, marked the beginning of Israel's dominance in Canaan. Following Jericho, the Israelites faced the city of Ai. Initially, they suffered a setback because of hidden sin within the camp. Achan had taken forbidden items from Jericho, bringing judgment upon Israel. After identifying and addressing this transgression, Joshua led a renewed attack, defeating Ai and burning it to the ground. This incident highlighted the importance of collective holiness and strict adherence to God's commands. Joshua's next challenge came from the Gibeonites, who deceived Israel into forming a treaty by pretending to be from a distant land. Despite the deception, Joshua honored the treaty, demonstrating integrity and the value of oaths made before God. When the Gibeonites were threatened by a coalition of Amorite kings, Joshua led Israel to defend them. During this battle, one of the most famous miracles occurred. Joshua prayed for the sun to stand still, and God extended the daylight until Israel achieved victory. As Joshua's campaign progressed, he led Israel in a series of conquests across the central, southern, and northern regions of Canaan. Each victory was marked by reliance on God's guidance and a commitment to eliminating idolatry from the land. Cities like Hebron, Lachish, and Hazor fell before Israel, establishing dominance over the territory. Throughout the campaigns, Joshua adhered to the instructions given by Moses. He divided the conquered land among the 12 tribes, ensuring each had their inheritance. The distribution of land was conducted at Shiloh, where the tabernacle was set up, symbolizing God's dwelling among his people. One of the final acts of Joshua's leadership was a covenant renewal at Shechem. There, he reminded the people of God's faithfulness and warned them of the consequences of disobedience. Joshua declared, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," reaffirming his commitment to God and urging Israel to remain faithful to the covenant. As Joshua aged, he gathered the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel for a final address. He recounted the victories God had given them and reminded them that the land they inhabited was a fulfillment of divine promises. Joshua urged them to continue driving out any remaining nations and to avoid adopting the gods and customs of the surrounding peoples. Joshua's farewell speech resonated deeply with the Israelites as he reminded them that their success and prosperity depended on their faithfulness to God. He emphasized the need to love and obey the Lord wholeheartedly, warning that if they turned away, they would lose the land God had given them. After blessing the nation and reaffirming the covenant, Joshua passed away at the age of 110. He was buried at Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim. His death marked the end of an era, but the legacy of his leadership endured. The people of Israel continued to serve the Lord throughout the lifetime of the elders who outlived Joshua and had witnessed the great works the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua's life exemplified faith, courage, and unwavering obedience to God. His leadership not only secured the Promised Land, but also established a foundation of trust in divine guidance that shaped Israel for generations to come.